NotebookLM Deep Dive Podcast, Buddhism Experiences, November 26th, 24. Today program, we are talking, rather listening to the AI podcast about Buddhism. Before we get into the AI podcast, NongBeee needs to briefly tells you about what you are going to hear. This is the backstory of what the podcast is all about. It's from unfinished movie script NongBeee Gameboy, is currently writing which NongBeee is not sure if it will be finished, and if it is finished it would make into a movie, and if it is made into a movie NongBeee will be able to see it. Ha ha ha. Just so happened that during the time of this writing, NotebookLM came on the scene as another AI tool, so NongBeee is just curious on AI reaction or reflection on the subject matter. Briefly, not to make a spoiler, seriously? Haha. It's story of Banpot who supposedly was in a coma during his hospital stay. Banpot experienced what is known as a reincarnation, reborn into a ill-stricken polio girl in a rich British family who was raised as a Catholic. When she was young, she was introduced to Buddhism concept of cause and effect, that thing don't really happen out of nowhere. There is always reasons for thing to happen the way it does. With the guidance of her gardener, Arun, an Indian who believes in Buddhism, she slowly abandons her Catholic belief and study more of the Lord Buddha's teaching, and when she is in her college year she writes book to inspire handicapped people. Due to her frail health she dies at an early age in her young adult life, surrounded by her parents and her beloved boyfriend, who shares the same Buddhism belief. Then Banpot experiences another reincarnation into life in hell from committed a serious crime against humanity by order a bomb launch that kill 500,000 people. He has to suffer in hell that is similar to what described in the Tipika for more than 4 million years. After Banpot woke up from his coma, he is wondering about what he experienced, that he felt not a dream because of all the senses and logic flow of the events in those experiences. So he decided to seek some answer from an old high school friend who he has not seen for more than 20 years. They met in a Thai restaurant, and Banpot tells his friend, Somsak, about his experiences during his coma. Somsak, a Buddhist study lecturer at the university, gave him some guideline about Buddhism and how to consider what has happened to him as a wake-up call for him to proceed with his life onwards. Next is the podcast generated by NotebookLM AI about the above backstory.
Welcome back for another deep dive. You guys sent in some really, really interesting notes this time.
Yeah.
It's all centered around this man named Banpot.
Okay.
And the catch is that these sources feel like such a strange mix of like personal reflection and fiction.
Yeah.
It's like, where does one end and the other begin?
Exactly.
So our mission today is to try to untangle this whole story.
Yes.
And see if maybe we can find a deeper meaning hidden within all of it.
Yeah, what grabs me right away is how much these sources seem to be deliberately playing with our perception of what is real and what's not.
Right.
We're just kind of constantly being made to wonder, is this something that Banpot actually remembers? Or is this a story he's crafted to explore some kind of deeper truth?
It's a real puzzle.
It is.
And the first part of his journey is described as this second life, where he wakes up as a young English girl named Leela, who is living with polio.
Interesting.
And that's where things start to get really tricky.
Absolutely. Rather than a literal reincarnation.
Sure.
I'm thinking this is probably more like a symbol for some kind of dramatic shift in Banpot's perspective.
Okay.
Almost like he's stepping into a totally different existence.
And the way he describes Leela's world, it's so vivid.
Oh, yeah.
The smell of the flowers in her garden, the taste of that Cullen skink soup, which is this traditional Scottish soup.
Interesting.
It's like he's experiencing all of it through her.
And the details are so important, the sensory details.
Yes.
I think they point to a deeper emotional connection
that
Banpot has with Leela. It's not just like a superficial transformation.
Right.
It's like this complete immersion in another life.
Another way of being.
Yeah.
And then we get these glimpses into her childhood. And it's a challenging childhood. Her parents are always fighting.
Oh.
Her disability obviously creates these limitations for her. Yeah. But she's got this amazing resilience about her, this determination to find meaning and happiness, despite all of that.
Yeah. Does this at all mirror any challenges that Banpot might have faced in his own life?
That's what I was thinking, yeah.
Yeah.
But what's really interesting to me is how the whole concept of karma is introduced through Leela's story. Yeah. It's the gardener, Arun, who teaches her about actions having consequences.
Right.
And it's like these ripples spreading across a pond.
Okay.
And this feels important.
It does, especially because then Leela starts keeping this notebook.
Yes.
Where she's writing down every act of kindness.
Yeah.
And then all of the positive consequences of that.
She is very meticulous about it.
Yeah. And, could this be Banpot's way of trying to make sense of his own past?
I was wondering that.
Like almost looking for ways to address some of his past wrongs.
I think you're right.
We have to remember, we're only seeing these little pieces of Banpot's world and these tiny details. They might be his way of showing us his own karmic journey. And thinking about it, it really does highlight the power of actively looking for the good.
Yeah.
In our actions and the positive consequences. It's like by focusing on that, we make karma less abstract and more tangible.
Yeah.
Like it becomes something that we can actually participate in.
I love that, it shifts it from being this vague cosmic force to something we can actually affect with our choices.
Right.
Which would be so important if you were struggling with feelings of regret.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like we think Banpot might be.
Now, as we move along, it's so interesting to see Leela finding her voice as a writer.
Yeah.
And she's using her disability as this source of inspiration.
Right.
Connecting with other people who maybe feel marginalized.
Yeah.
And all of these stories that she writes.
Yeah.
Especially the ones about flying in dreams. Do you think those are symbolic?
I was wondering that too. Yeah. They definitely feel symbolic, like maybe they represent this yearning for freedom and for transcending these limitations. Not just the physical ones, but the emotional ones and the societal ones as well.
Right. And let's not forget that those flying dreams in the context of Buddhist thought have an even deeper meaning, because freedom isn't just about being liberated physically.
Right.
But it's about freeing yourself from the things that bind us.
Yes.
From desires and the illusions that keep us trapped in suffering. So Leela's stories, where she's soaring above the earth, could be a way that Banpot is showing us this deeper yearning for spiritual liberation.
That adds another layer to it, for sure.
It does.
And then we get to this point where Leela's father, who has been so critical of her writing, he finally acknowledges her talent.
Right.
And it feels like a real turning point.
Yeah. Could this mirror Banpot's own desire for validation? Maybe from a parental figure.
Maybe. Yeah. Family dynamics really do shape our sense of self-worth.
They do. And this also speaks to that universal need for acceptance.
To be seen.
Yes. From the people we care about the most.
Okay. So then Leela's writing career takes off.
It does.
She publishes a book. Her following online grows.
Right.
She even starts giving lectures at universities.
Wow.
It's like a testament to her perseverance and her strength.
It's also such a good illustration of this idea from Buddhism about finding a purpose.
Right.
And making a positive impact.
Yes.
Even though you've faced adversity.
Right. And Leela's words, they are touching people's lives.
They are.
And she finds love with James, who not only supports her writing, but also shares this interest in Buddhist philosophy. And there's this really beautiful exchange that they have in Pali.
Yeah, the language of Buddhist scriptures.
That detail really stood out to me as well.
It did to me too. It shows how important it can be to find a partner who understands you and supports your spiritual journey. That shared set of values.
Yeah, absolutely.
That intellectual connection.
And then the source material takes this sharp turn, and Banpot's narrative shifts to this completely different experience. That's really terrifying.
Okay.
And incredibly vivid.
Right.
And he describes it as this descent into hell.
No. Now, this is where I think we have to be extra careful.
Right.
Because we're dealing with something so personal.
Yeah.
And potentially symbolic.
Right.
We need to approach this with sensitivity and an open mind.
For sure. For sure. The sensory details in this section are almost unbearable. The scorching heat of the flames, the deafening screams of the tormented souls.
Right.
And Banpot describes being tortured on this fiery wheel.
The fiery wheel.
For what feels like an eternity.
Yeah. And those descriptions of the tortures?
Yeah.
And that length of time?
Over 4.6 million years.
Yeah, more than 4.6 million years. That's in line with traditional Buddhist depictions of the underworld.
Right.
It suggests that Banpot may have been struggling with some pretty intense feelings of guilt or remorse, maybe reflecting on things he did in the past that he now deeply regrets.
Right, and then there's this really chilling moment when a voice, it's disembodied,
right?
And we assume it's Yomatooth, the guardian of hell.
Yeah.
He taunts Banpot about the length of his sentence.
It really is haunting. The figure of Yomatut is like this really strong symbol of karmic justice. You know, he embodies the universe, holding people accountable for their actions. It's a stark reminder that our choices have consequences.
But even in this experience, which is just horrific, there is this glimmer of hope when the timer finally counts down to 0.
Okay.
Ganpot is released from that fiery wheel, and he just disintegrates into thin air.
What do you make of that?
I don't know.
Do you think it could be a symbolic purging of his past karma?
Maybe.
A completion of a karmic cycle?
Maybe.
Like, even when faced with that level of suffering, there's still that possibility of redemption and liberation.
It's interesting. Okay, so this brings us to the last part of this first section of Ganpot's story.
Okay.
Where he decides to seek guidance from his old friend Samsak, who's a Buddhist scholar. And this part feels so different from the other ones.
Right.
It's set in this really casual environment, Thai restaurant.
Yeah.
And there's even some humor mixed in.
I think that shift in tone is intentional.
Yeah.
You know, it kind of brings us back down to earth.
Right.
After that intense, hellish experience.
Right.
Reminding us that, you know, even these profound spiritual insights can be talked about in everyday settings.
Exactly right. Spirituality doesn't have to be this separate, esoteric thing.
Yeah. It's woven into our daily lives.
Exactly. And Samsak, he orders this huge amount of Thai food.
Oh, he does.
And he's even poking fun at some of Ganpot's past antics.
Right.
It's really endearing.
It is. It shows how human they both are.
Yes.
You know, that even people on spiritual journeys are still just people trying to figure life out.
And so Ganpot recounts his experiences to Samsak.
Yeah.
And what I find interesting is how Samsak reacts to all of it. He's not dismissive.
Right.
He's not skeptical.
Okay.
He listens intently. And then he really calmly explains how all of this aligns with these Buddhist teachings.
Samsak embodies what a good teacher should be.
Right.
Patient, insightful, able to bridge that gap between complicated philosophy and personal experience.
He's really good at it.
Yeah.
And he's so specific about how to differentiate Ganpot's experiences from just a typical dream, especially the continuous logical nature of his reincarnation as Leela. It's like he's doing a scientific analysis.
It's crucial that he's applying critical thinking to this story.
Right.
Not just accepting it at face value.
Right.
He's looking for evidence, for consistency, for anything that can explain these unusual events.
And then he uses this brilliant analogy about a lemon.
Right.
He says that you can try as hard as you want to describe the taste of a lemon to someone who has never tasted one, but they will never truly understand.
Until they experience it themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love that.
But what does it mean for Ganpot?
Right.
You know, what does it mean in this context?
What does it mean?
I think it shows how limited language can be
Okay.
when it comes to trying to convey something spiritual.
Right.
Sometimes words can't capture the essence of a certain truth. You have to feel it, live it, have it be a part of you.
Okay, so Ganpot has had these really intense,
Yeah.
even disturbing experiences.
Right.
And now we're being told that words can't even really describe them.
Right.
That's pretty mind-blowing.
It is. And to make it even more complicated, Samsak then says that Ganpot is experiencing this shortcut.
A shortcut.
To understanding these Buddhist concepts, bypassing all of the traditional steps.
Okay, wait a minute. A shortcut that goes against everything I thought I knew about spiritual development.
Yeah.
Isn't it supposed to be about years of dedicated practice?
Right. Meditation study.
How can you skip ahead like that?
Well, that's what we're going to look at next.
Okay, you've definitely got my attention.
Okay, good. What's really striking about this whole shortcut idea is how Samsak frames Buddhist teachings as facts about the universe, you know, specifically about the system of living organisms.
Okay.
It's a different way of looking at religion and spirituality.
Yeah, it really challenges this assumption that Buddhism is about blind faith.
Right.
You know, Samsak really stresses critical thinking and personal experience, you know, urging Ganpot to really test these concepts out.
Right, not just accept them blindly.
Which makes his story even more fascinating.
It does.
Because he's essentially being given this crash course.
Right, a crash course.
In all of these concepts.
Through these really vivid, visceral experiences.
Yeah, like he's living them sack.
Not just reading about them.
And it takes us back to that lemon analogy again.
Yeah.
You can read all about the taste of a lemon.
Right.
But until you actually taste it, you won't get it.
You won't really know.
Right.
It's the same thing with these spiritual concepts.
It is, he's been given this glimpse behind the curtain, this sneak peek at this cosmic play.
And the question is, how will he use this knowledge?
Right. Will it change his choices?
Will he live differently?
Yeah.
It's interesting how Somsak doesn't give him any concrete that most Buddhist practitioners would strive for.
Right.
But rarely actually achieve.
Right. Even after years of dedicated practice.
So is that really possible?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's an easy answer.
Okay.
Some spiritual traditions believe in sudden enlightenment. This moment of profound insight.
Right.
That just completely changes your perspective.
Yeah, but even in those traditions, ongoing practice is important.
Yeah, it's essential.
So it's not just about having this one big transformative experience. You have to integrate it.
You have to make it part of your life.
Yeah, into your daily life.
Yeah, how you think, how you act, how you interact with the world.
And that's what's so compelling about Bampot's story.
I think so.
You know, we're seeing just the beginning.
The very beginning of
his journey. He's at a crossroads. And he gets to choose where to go from here.
He's had a taste of something profound.
Yeah.
Now he has to figure out how to digest it.
I like that.
Yeah. Now, before we go too far, there's another really important part of Somsak's explanation that I think we need to talk about.
Right.
He makes this distinction between the Buddhist concept of heaven and hell and how other doctrines approach those ideas. He even says that many religious interpretations of the afterlife rely too heavily on imagination, whereas Buddhism grounds its teachings in facts and logic.
Wow, that's a pretty bold statement.
Is he saying that other religions are just making things up?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think what he's trying to say is that Buddhism emphasizes a different way of understanding reality.
Okay.
You know, it's less about blindly believing in rules and more about investigating how the mind and the universe work through your own experiences and critical thinking.
So instead of accepting these predetermined answers about heaven and hell, Buddhists are encouraged to explore those concepts for themselves using their own observations.
Exactly.
And logic.
It's about questioning assumptions, testing hypotheses, refining your understanding through practice and reflection.
Okay, so it's like a more empirical approach.
Yeah, you could say.
To spirituality.
You know, it's about applying the same rigor and skepticism that you would use in science to explore the nature of reality.
Right.
Even the parts that are beyond our normal perception.
Okay, that makes sense. But if Buddhism is grounded in observable facts, how does it explain things like reincarnation?
Right.
Or these realms beyond our perception?
That's what makes it so interesting.
Right.
Buddhism doesn't shy away from these mystical or supernatural concepts.
Right.
But it approaches them in this really careful way.
Okay.
You know, through observation and logic.
So it's not about rejecting those possibilities.
Right.
But about approaching them with a scientific mindset.
Yeah, looking for evidence.
Right.
Explanations that align with what we know about the natural world.
So it's like Buddhism is trying to bridge this gap.
Yeah, I think so.
Between science and spirituality.
It is.
Offering a framework for understanding that includes both the material and the immaterial.
Right, the seen and the unseen.
It's like a spiritual science.
That's a great way to put it. And that's what makes it so fascinating.
Right.
It doesn't say you have to abandon logic or reason. Or just believe things blindly. It wants you to go out and investigate for yourself.
Right.
Experience the world with an open mind and draw your own conclusions based on what you see.
This actually makes me think about Bampot's situation differently.
Okay. How so?
He's been given this extraordinary glimpse into how karma works, reincarnation, the potential consequences of his actions.
Right.
But he's also been given the tools to critically examine all of that.
He has. And that's what makes him different from someone who might just have a vision or a dream and interpret it through whatever religious framework they already have. Bampot's being challenged to go deeper.
Yes, to question everything.
And figure it out on his own.
Exactly.
So going back to what we were talking about before, it seems like Bampot's journey is far from over.
Oh, it's just beginning.
Yeah, he's standing at this crossroads.
He is.
And whichever path he chooses is going to shape his future.
In this life.
Yeah.
And maybe even in lives to come.
But to understand where he might go next,
I
think we need to look back.
Okay.
at his life before all of this happened.
Before these experiences.
Yeah, what kind of person was he? What choices might he be wrestling with now?
Yeah, we do know that he's one of the 10 richest men in his country.
Right, that suggests ambition.
Ambition drive.
Right, a focus on material success.
Yeah, but there are also these hints.
Yeah.
That he's looking for something more, meaning connection.
Right.
Something beyond wealth and status.
His interest in Buddhism and his willingness to confide in Samsak
really suggests that he wants something deeper.
Exactly. And that yearning might have been amplified by his experiences as Leela, where he saw firsthand the power of compassion, empathy, creative expression.
Like those experiences gave him a taste of a different way of being.
Yeah, a way of living that was more aligned with his values.
Right, like his journey as Leela prepared him for this encounter with the reality of karma, softened his heart and opened his mind.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And it really highlights how our experiences, both positive and negative, can shape how we see ourselves and the universe.
So what choices or challenges might Bampot be facing now?
Well, given his wealth and influence, he might be struggling with how to use his resources ethically, responsibly.
Yeah.
Maybe reevaluating his business practices, his philanthropy.
Right, even his personal relationship.
Yeah, is he living in accordance with compassion, generosity, non-harming?
Right. Those are big questions.
They are. And don't forget, he's also experienced the horrifying consequences of actions that cause suffering, even if those actions weren't intentional.
Right. This could make him question the systems he's a part of.
Yeah. Is he contributing to those systems?
Right.
Or challenging them?
You're right. He's not just dealing with personal choices.
Right.
He's grappling with the complexities of systemic injustice.
The ripple effects of our actions.
Yeah.
The responsibility that comes with power.
And privilege.
Exactly.
Wow. It's a lot.
It is.
And we don't get a definitive answer about how Bampot ultimately responds.
No. The source material leaves it open-ended.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I think makes this deep dive so interesting.
Yeah.
Because we're not just passively taking in information.
Right. We're actively engaging with these concepts.
We're considering how they apply to our own lives.
In
that
fact,
if I were in Bampot's shoes, having experienced all of this, what choices would I make?
Yeah.
How would I use this knowledge?
Yeah. How would you shape your own life?
Yeah, and make a positive impact.
That's a great question to think about.
Yeah, it really makes you consider your values.
Your priorities.
Yeah, your place in the world.
Exactly.
And that's what we're going to continue to explore.
We are.
As we move into the final part.
The final part.
Of our deep dive into Bampot's story.
I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. It's pretty wild to think about the contrast between Bampot's time as Leela and the absolute horror of that Buddhist hell.
It is.
It really makes you wonder if those two experiences are supposed to balance each other out in some way.
Is there some deeper connection?
Yeah.
Between those two seemingly opposite realms?
Right.
That's a great question, and it's one that Buddhist philosophy really grapples with.
Yeah.
Suffering and liberation are often very closely linked in Buddhist thought. Sometimes going through intense suffering can be the thing that wakes you up.
Right.
It shakes you out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And forces you to face the truth that nothing is permanent.
So are you saying that Bampot needed both extremes?
Maybe.
The joy and fulfillment of Leela's life?
Yeah.
And the unimaginable torment of hell?
Right, to really get this whole idea of the cyclical nature of existence.
Right, and to see how important it is to make conscious, compassionate choices.
It is a powerful idea.
Life isn't just a straight line.
Right.
From good to bad or bad to good.
Yeah, it's more like this dance of opposites.
Light and shadow.
Yes, joy and sorrow, creation and destruction.
And it's within that dance that we find meaning.
Right.
It's about learning, growing, evolving.
And making choices.
Yes.
That contribute to the well-being of everyone.
Beautifully said. And that brings us back to this core idea in Buddhism that we have the power to create our own destinies.
Right, not through some outside force, but through the choices we make every single day.
So even though Bampot's story has all of these extraordinary events, these supernatural elements, the message is actually really human.
It is.
We are responsible for what we do.
Right.
And those actions have consequences.
Yes, both for ourselves.
And everyone around us.
And for the world.
Exactly. And I love how Samsak really emphasizes this point with Bampot.
Yeah.
He says, forget the past. It's gone. You can't change that. It's only the present and the future that you can't.
Right. It's like he's giving Bampa permission to let go of the guilt.
The regret.
Yeah, and to focus on making better choices from now on.
It's a message of hope and empowerment.
It is.
It reminds us that we're not just helpless victims of fate.
Right.
We are active participants in our own lives.
Yes. We can choose. We can learn. We can change.
We can make a difference.
And it all starts with awareness.
Right.
Banpot's journey began with these really shocking experiences.
Yeah, that forced him to see reality differently.
Right. He had to face some really uncomfortable truths about himself and the world.
And those experiences led him to seek knowledge, to find a wise mentor. And to start looking inward.
Yeah, at himself and how he wanted to change.
And that's a journey that anyone can take.
Right.
No matter who you are, what you believe, what you've been through,
right.
You can cultivate awareness through mindfulness introspection.
Yeah, getting different perspectives.
And you can learn from what life throws at you.
Right.
The good and the bad.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Bampot's story, I have one final thought for everyone listening.
Okay.
If you were Bampot, having gone through all of this.
All of the transformation and insight.
Yeah. What choices would you make? How would you use what you learned?
Right. How would you shape your own life?
And make a positive impact?
That's a great question to think about.
It is. It makes you think about what really matters to you.
What's important.
Your priorities. What your role is in the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And maybe by asking ourselves these questions, by looking inward and taking action, we can all help create a world where suffering is less.
Less pain. Less torment, where compassion, wisdom, and liberation are possible for everyone.
That's definitely something worth working towards.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
It's been a wild ride. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep striving to make the world a better place.
NongBeee feels that the AI podcast seems to be overly nice and not critical enough. So if the source is made up like the one NongBeee presented here, it can be taken as something tangible or somehow related to certain belief doctrine or system if one doesn't check the source carefully. In other words, it can mislead listeners to thinking this is what's supposed to be even though it is totally made up with no scientific data or info to back the source up. A disclaimer should be warranted in any of the AI podcast for listeners to be aware of what they are listening to. NongBeee Gameboy, November 26, 24, 1234.